The galaxy is vast, a tapestry of stars and worlds so immense that it defies comprehension. Trillions of souls labor beneath the Emperor's light, their lives bound to hive cities, forge worlds, and distant outposts. Each a fragile spark in the unending dark. Yet, even in this boundless expanse, there is a shadow that moves, a hunger that knows no limit, no mercy, no end. On the fringes of known space, where the Imperium's grasp weakens and the stars grow cold, worlds fall silent, not with the clash of steel or the roar of guns, but with the soft, relentless chittering of a billion claws. The Tyranids are coming. They do not negotiate, they do not falter, and they do not stop. Theirs is a tide of flesh and chitin, a living apocalypse that consumes all in its path, leaving only barren rock and the echoes of extinguished lives. Tonight, we tell the tale of Thaddeus, a man who stood on the edge of extinction, watching as his world crumbled under the weight of the Hive Fleets. Settle in, dim the lights, and let the whispers of a doomed planet lull you into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Picture a sky, once bright with the golden hues of a setting sun, now choked with a writhing, pulsating mass. The stars, those distant beacons of hope, are blotted out, swallowed by a swarm of bioships that drift like tumors in the void. These are not vessels of metal and fire, but living things, grotesque, organic monstrosities that pulse with malevolent intent. Their forms are incomprehensible, a mockery of life itself. Tendrils that stretch across kilometers, maws that gape wide enough to swallow cities, and eyes, countless unblinking eyes that see nothing yet know everything. The Hive Fleet moves, as one, directed by a singular will, a hive mind that binds every claw, every fang, every spore, into a symphony of destruction. It is not war they bring, but annihilation, a biological reckoning that strips worlds to their core and leaves no trace of what once was. On Agrippa 4, a humble agri-world in the Ultima Segmentum, the first signs of this doom were subtle, almost imperceptible. The crops, once lush and golden, began to wither, their leaves curling under a strange, oily film that fell from the sky. The livestock grew restless, their lowing turning to screams as their flesh blistered and mutated. The people, simple farmers and laborers, whispered of omens, the absence of birdsong, the stillness of the winds, the faint hum that lingered in the air like a half-forgotten nightmare. They prayed to the Emperor, their voices rising in the stone chapels that dotted the plains, but the heavens offered no reply. The astropaths, those rare souls who could touch the warp, fell silent, their minds overwhelmed by a psychic pressure so vast it felt like the galaxy itself was screaming. Thaddeus Vaughn, a sergeant in the Planetary Defense Force, stood on the walls of Fort Kellis when the end began. He was no hero, no champion clad in ceramite, or blessed with the Emperor's gene-forged might. He was a man of the soil, his hands calloused from years of tilling fields before the draft called him to service. His lasgun was old, its power pack flickering, and his helmet's visor bore a crack that distorted the world in fractured lines. Yet, it was Thaddeus who saw the first shadow cross the horizon, a writhing mass that seemed to drink the light from the sky. He stood frozen, his breath catching in his throat. As the truth settled over him like a shroud, Agrippa 4 was doomed. The Tyranids, known to the Imperium as the Great Devourer, are a force beyond reason. They are not driven by greed or ambition, nor do they seek glory or dominion. Their purpose is singular: to consume. Every world they touch becomes fuel for their endless expansion, its biomass stripped and repurposed to birth new horrors. Hive Fleet Gorgon, the scourge that descended upon Agrippa 4, was particularly insidious. Known for its adaptability, it could evolve its bioforms mid-invasion, rendering weapons useless and strategies obsolete. A toxin that slaughtered one wave of gaunts would be countered by the next. Their carapaces thickened, their blood altered to neutralize the poison. To face Gorgon was to fight a nightmare that learned, adapted, and grew stronger with every death it caused. Thaddeus had heard tales of the Tyranids, whispered in the barracks, by veterans who claimed to have fought them and lived. They spoke of creatures that moved like insects, yet thought as one, of skies that rained acid and spores, of worlds that screamed before falling silent. He had dismissed them as exaggerations, the boasts of men trying to outdo one another's fears. But now, as he stood on the crumbling walls of Fort Kellis, he understood. The air was thick with a sickly sweet stench. The ground trembled with the distant march of countless claws, and the horizon pulsed with a life that was not life, an alien hunger that knew his name, his fears, his fragility. The people of Agrippa had no hope of victory. Their PDF was undertrained, their weapons outdated, their fortifications little more than stone and steel, against a foe that could dissolve both. The Hive cities in the south had fallen first, their spires toppled by that strode through the streets like gods of destruction. The astropathic relays had gone dark, the warp itself recoiling from the Hive mind's shadow. No Imperial Navy would come, no Space Marines would descend in drop pods to turn the tide. Agrippa IV was alone, a speck of light in a galaxy that no longer cared. Yet, in the face of this inevitability, Thaddeus stood his ground. He was not driven by courage, but by something deeper, something human. The stubborn refusal to surrender, even when all was lost. Around him, his squad, laborers, and youths barely old enough to hold a lasgun clutched their weapons and prayed. They were not soldiers, not really, but they were all that remained. The chittering grew louder, a relentless tide of sound that drowned out the world. The Tyranids were coming, and they would not stop. This is the stage upon which our tale unfolds. A world on the brink of oblivion, where the air is heavy with dread, and the ground is alive with death. It is not a story of triumph or redemption, but of survival, of the fleeting moments of humanity that persist even as the jaws of the Hive close in. Thaddeus's tale is one of countless others, a single voice in a chorus of loss, yet it carries the weight of a world's end. So, settle in, let the darkness envelop you, and listen to the whispers of Agrippa IV. Let them carry you into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where hope is a memory, and the only certainty is the hunger that waits beyond the stars. Welcome to Tales of the Tyranid Wars, a journey into the bleakest corners of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, where the stars themselves seem to shudder under the weight of an unrelenting nightmare. This is not a story of heroism or triumph, nor is it a saga of noble sacrifice or defiant last stands. Instead, it is a descent into dread, a meditation on survival against impossible odds, and a haunting exploration of the quiet terror that lingers in the aftermath of a Tyranid invasion. Tonight, we walk the shattered streets of Agrippa IV, once thriving agri-world in the Ultima Segmentum, now reduced to a desolate husk by the insatiable hunger of Hive Fleet Gorgon. Our guide through this desolate landscape is Thaddeus Varney, a lowly sergeant in the Planetary Defense Force, a man whose life was forever altered when the skies turned black with the writhing forms of bioships. Through his eyes, we will witness the slow, suffocating horror of a world consumed not by fire or blade, but by an unrelenting, biological tide that leaves nothing in its wake. This is a tale to sleep to, a somber lullaby crafted to draw you into the abyss of despair, where the only comfort lies in the inevitability of the end. The Warhammer 40,000 universe is a realm of eternal conflict, where humanity clings to survival, amidst a galaxy teeming with threats. Orcs ravage worlds with savage glee, chaos festers in the shadows of the warp, and ancient Xenos empires plot their resurgence. Yet, among these myriad horrors, the Tyranids stand apart. They are not driven by ideology, ambition, or even malice. They are a force of nature, a living cataclysm that exists only to consume. Their Hive Fleets, vast armadas of organic vessels, drift through the void, each a grotesque ecosystem of claws, teeth, and insatiable hunger. The Tyranids do not conquer, they devour. They do not destroy, they assimilate. Every world they touch is stripped of its biomass, its oceans drained, its atmosphere poisoned, its very essence repurposed to fuel the hive mind's endless expansion. To face them is to face extinction itself, a foe that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be stopped, and cannot be escaped. Agrippa IV was one such world, a verdant jewel in the Imperium's crown, its rolling plains and fertile fields feeding billions across nearby hive worlds. Its people were simple farmers, laborers, and traders, living under the Emperor's light, their lives governed by the rhythm of harvest and prayer. The Planetary Defense Force, tasked with protecting this agri-world, was little more than a militia, armed with outdated lasguns and crumbling fortifications, trained to fend off pirates or quell minor uprisings. They were unprepared for the scale of what was to come. When Hive Fleet Gorgon descended in 998 M41, it brought with it a horror that defied comprehension. Known for its terrifying adaptability, Gorgon could evolve its bioforms in the midst of battle, rendering Imperial tactics obsolete. A weapon that worked against one wave of Tyranids would fail against the next, as the hive mind reshaped its creatures to counter every defense. Agrippa IV's fate was sealed the moment the first spore fell from the sky. This narrative is crafted to immerse you in the atmosphere of the Tyranid Wars, to evoke the creeping dread that seeps into the bones of those who face the Hive Fleets. It is not a tale of grand battles or heroic charges, but of the quiet, gnawing fear that takes root in the hearts of ordinary men and women. The Tyranids are not just a physical threat, they are a psychological one, their presence a violation of the natural order, their bioforms gaunts with side-like claws, lictors that stalk in silence, ripper swarms that devour all in their path are grotesque masterpieces, each a testament to the hive mind's perverse creativity. Yet, it is their unity, their singular purpose, that makes them so terrifying. Every creature, from the smallest spore to the towering hive tyrant, is an extension of the same will, a mind so vast it drowns out the warp itself, silencing astropaths and choking the Emperor's light. Thaddeus Varn, our guide, is no larger-than-life hero. He is a man of the soil, a farmer's son drafted into the PDF, more familiar with the weight of a plow than a lasgun. At 30, his face is lined with the weariness of a life spent toiling, his brown eyes heavy with the burden of responsibility he never sought. He is not a leader by choice, but by necessity, thrust into command when his superiors fell to the Tyranids' vanguard organisms. Thaddeus's story is not one of glory, but of survival, of the small human moments that persist even as the world crumbles through him. We will explore the fragility of humanity in the face of cosmic hunger, the way fear erodes hope, and the stubborn defiance that keeps a man standing even when all is lost. The setting of Agrippa IV is as much a character as Thaddeus himself. Before the Tyranids came, it was a world of golden fields and clear skies, its cities modest but proud, its people bound by faith and labor. Now, it is a graveyard, its landscapes transformed into a nightmarish tableau. The air is thick with spores that burn the lungs, the ground rides with ripper swarms, and the skies pulse with the silhouettes of bioships. Fort Kellis, where much of our tale unfolds, is a crumbling outpost, its walls pockmarked by fire, its halls echoing with the prayers of the desperate. The chapel within, adorned with faded icons of the Emperor, is a last refuge for the survivors, a place where faith and fear collide. Every detail, the slick organic film coating the walls, the distant chittering of claws, the sickly sweet stench of decays, designed to pull you into this dying world, to make you feel the weight of its doom. This tale is meant to be a meditative experience, a somber lullaby for a galaxy at war. Its rhythm is deliberate, its tone heavy with the inevitability of loss. As you listen, let the words wash over you, each one a brushstroke in a portrait of despair. The Tyranids do not offer the catharsis of a battle won or a foe vanquished. They offer only the slow, grinding certainty of consumption. This is not a story to inspire, but to haunt, to linger in your thoughts as you drift into sleep. If you find yourself slipping into dreams or nightmares, let the echoes of Agrippa IV guide you. Let the whispers of Thaddeus's world, of a planet lost to the Hive, carry you into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. The structure of this narrative follows a deliberate arc, designed to mirror the descent of Agrippa IV into oblivion. We will begin with the first signs of the Tyranid invasion, the subtle omens that heralded the end. From there, we will follow Thaddeus through the final days of Fort Kellis, each moment marked by a new horror spores that poison the air, that adapt to every defense, and the crushing psychic weight of the hive mind. The focus will remain on the human cost, the small acts of defiance and despair that define the survivors' final hours. There will be no grand resolution, no miraculous salvation, only the quiet acceptance of the inevitable. Yet, within that inevitability lies the heart of the story, the resilience of the human spirit. However fleeting, in the face of cosmic indifference, as you settle in, imagine yourself standing beside Thaddeus on the walls of Fort Kellis, the air thick with the stench of decay, the horizon alive with the writhing forms of the hive. Feel the weight of his lasgun, the flicker of his cracked visor, the tremor in his hands as he faces a foe he cannot hope to defeat. This is not a tale for the faint of heart, but for those who find solace in the shadows, who seek to understand the cost of survival in a universe that offers no mercy. Let the words envelop you, the tapestry of dread and loss, and let the story of Agrippa IV become a part of you. If you drift off, let the echoes of a doomed world carry you into the void, where the Tyranids wait, their hunger eternal, their claws ever near. The Tyranids are a force unlike any other in the Imperium of man, a Xenos threat that defies the conventions of war and the boundaries of reason. They are not driven by ambition, faith, or vengeance motives that define the conflicts of humanity, orcs, or even the twisted followers of chaos. Instead, Their purpose is singular and unrelenting, an insatiable need to consume. Originating from beyond the galactic rim, in the uncharted voids where even the Emperor's light does not reach. These horrors operate as a singular hive mind, a gestalt consciousness that binds billions of bioforms into a single, horrifying will. From the smallest ripper swarms, writhing like maggots across the corpses of worlds, to the towering hive tyrants, whose mere presence can shatter the resolve of the bravest warriors. Every Tyranid creature is an extension of this alien intellect. Their invasions are not wars in the traditional sense, with strategies, treaties, or victories to be won. They are ecological apocalyptists, cataclysms of flesh and chitin that strip planets of all biomass, leaving behind barren rock, silent ruins, and a void where life once thrived. The Tyranids' origins are shrouded in mystery. Their arrival in the Milky Way, a harbinger of doom that has baffled imperial scholars and inquisitors alike. Some speculate they are refugees from a devoured galaxy, driven by hunger to seek new feeding grounds. Others whisper that they are a punishment sent by the universe itself, a cleansing force to erase the hubris of sentient life. What is known is that their Hive Fleets' vast armadas of living bioships first appeared in the late 41st millennium, with Hive Fleet Behemoth carving a bloody path through the eastern fringe in 745 M41. Since then, fleets like Kraken, Leviathan, and Gorgon have spread like a plague, each bringing its own brand of terror. The Tyranids do not seek territory or resources in the human sense. They consume everything: plants, animals, water, even the atmosphere, reprocessing it into new bioforms to fuel their endless expansion. To face them is to face the end of all things, a force that cannot be bargained with, cannot be outwitted, and cannot be stopped. Hive Fleet Gorgon, the scourge that descended upon Agrippa IV, was particularly dreaded for its adaptability. Unlike other fleets, Gorgon could evolve its bioforms mid-invasion, its creatures mutating to counter any resistance with terrifying speed. A toxin that slaughtered a wave of gaunts would be rendered useless within hours, as the next wave emerged, with altered biology, immune to the poison. Lasgan fire that once burned through carapaces would glance off thickened chitin in subsequent assaults. This relentless evolution made Gorgon a nightmare for Imperial commanders, who found their strategies obsolete before they could be fully implemented. The fleet's bioships, grotesque amalgamations of flesh and bone, seeded worlds with spores that poisoned the air and corrupted the soil, preparing the way for the ground assault. Lictor's stealthy vanguard organisms would infiltrate defenses, sowing panic and eliminating key targets before the main swarm arrived. By the time the Hive Tyrants and Carnifexes descended, resistance was already crumbling, overwhelmed by the sheer adaptability and numbers of the Tyranid horde. Agrippa, for the stage for our tale, was a verdant agri-world in the Ultima Segmentum, a region known for its sprawling hive worlds and industrial forges. Unlike its neighbors, Agrippa IV was a place of simplicity and abundance. Its rolling fields and fertile plains producing grain, livestock, and other staples that fed billions across the sector. Its cities were modest, built of stone and plasteel, their spires adorned with statues of the emperor and saints of the Imperium. The population, numbering in the low millions, lived lives of toil and faith. Their days spent tending crops or herding groks under skies that shimmered with the golden light of a benevolent star. Temples dotted the landscape, their bells ringing out the hours of prayer, while the Planetary Defense Force (PDF) maintained a network of outposts to deter raiders or suppress the occasional labor dispute. Life on Agrippa IV was not without hardship, droughts, pests, and the ever-present tithe to the Imperium, but it was a life of purpose, grounded in the belief that their work sustained the Emperor's dominion. The PDF of Agrippa IV was ill-equipped for anything beyond the mundane threats of the galaxy. Its soldiers were farmers, mechanics, and youths drafted from the fields, armed with aging lasguns and flak armor that had seen better days. Their fortifications, like Fort Kellis, were relics of a more prosperous era, their walls pockmarked from years of neglect, their armories stocked with munitions that were often unreliable. Training was rudimentary, focused on crowd control and basic marksmanship, with little preparation for the scale of an alien invasion. The officers, drawn from the planet's minor nobility, were more concerned with status than strategy, their plans based on outdated manuals and blind faith in the Imperium's might. When Hive Fleet Gorgon descended in 998, M41, Agrippa IV had no chance. The fleet's bioships blotted out the sun, their spores choking the atmosphere, and their vanguard organisms tore through the PDF's meager defenses like a scythe. Through Wheat Dot, the Imperium's records of Agrippa IV's fall are sparse, fragmented by the chaos of the invasion. Vox logs, recovered from shattered outposts, speak of skies turning black and fields writhing with alien life. Survivor accounts, carried by the few who escaped on fleeing transports, describe horrors that defy comprehension, creatures that burrowed through steel, spores that burned the lungs, and a psychic pressure that drove men mad. Astropathic transmissions, sent in the final hours, were garbled, the minds of the psychers, overwhelmed by the hive mind's shadow. What little remains, paints a picture of a world undone, not by a single catastrophic battle, but by a slow, relentless erosion. The Tyranids did not conquer Agrippa IV. They consumed it, piece by piece, until nothing remained but silence. Our story begins in the final days of Agrippa IV, when the skies were thick with spores, and the ground trembled with the march of the Hive. The planet's cities had fallen, its hive spires reduced to rubble, their populations devoured or scattered. Fort Kellis, a crumbling outpost on the northern plains, was one of the last holdouts, its walls manned by a handful of survivors, who knew their stand was futile. The air was unbreathable without rebreathers, the water tainted with organic sludge, and the fields once golden with grain were now a writhing mass of ripper swarms, devouring everything in their path. The psychic weight of the hive mind pressed against the survivors, a constant, oppressive presence that drowned out hope and silenced prayer. It was here, in this dying world, that Thaddeus Varn's story unfolds. Thaddeus Varn, a sergeant in the Agrippa IV PDF, was no hero. Born to a family of farmers in the southern lowlands, he grew up tending grocks and repairing irrigation systems, his hands more accustomed to the weight of a shovel than a lasgun. Drafted into the PDF at 25, he served with quiet competence, maintaining the outpost's weapons and vehicles rather than seeking glory in combat. At 32, his face was weathered by sun and wind, his brown eyes heavy with the weight of a life he had not chosen. Thaddeus was not a leader by nature, but circumstance made him one. When the Tyranids came, his superiors fell some too, lictors others to despair, and he found himself in command of a dwindling squad, their numbers reduced by death and defection. He was not brave, not in the way the Imperium's heroes were brave, but he was stubborn, driven by a quiet resolve to protect those who looked to him, even when he knew it was hopeless. Thaddeus's story captures the human cost of the Tyranid Wars, not in grand gestures or heroic sacrifices, but in the quiet, desperate moments of those who know they cannot win. It is a tale of ordinary people caught in an extraordinary nightmare, their lives defined by fear, loss, and the fleeting moments of humanity that persist even as the world ends. The Tyranids are not just a physical threat, they are a violation of existence itself, stripping away not just life, but the very memory of it. Through Thaddeus, we see the toll of this violation, the way it erodes hope, fractures bonds, and leaves only the raw, unyielding core of human endurance. The backdrop of Agrippa IV's fall is a microcosm of the Tyranid threat. The planet's fields, once a symbol of life, become a graveyard, their soil poisoned by spores and burrowed by rippers. The cities, with their stone temples and plasteel walls, are reduced to rubble, their inhabitants consumed or driven mad by the hive mind's psychic scream. Fort Kellis, with its cracked walls and flickering lights, is a final bastion, a place where the survivors cling to faith and defiance even as the swarm closes in. Every element of this world, the stench of decay, the chittering of claws, the oppressive silence of a sky without stars, serves to immerse you in the horror of the Tyranid Wars, to make you feel the weight of a world's end. This background sets the stage for a story that is not about victory, but about survival, about the small, human moments that defined the Tyranid Wars. Thaddeus Varn is not a savior, not a warrior destined to turn the tide. He is a man, flawed and afraid, standing against a force that cannot be defeated. His tale is one of countless others, a single thread in the tapestry of the Imperium's struggle against the Great Devourer. As we follow him through the final days of Agrippa IV, we will witness the slow unraveling of a world, the erosion of hope, and the quiet, stubborn defiance that persists even in the face of annihilation. The first sign of the end came not with a roar, but with a whisper. Thaddeus Varn stood on the walls of Fort Kellis, a crumbling outpost perched on the edge of Agrippa IV's northern plains, where the golden fields of grain had once stretched to the horizon. The night was unnaturally still, no birds sang, no Insects buzzed, only a faint hum lingered in the air, like the drone of a distant engine that never grew closer. Thaddeus adjusted his helmet, its cracked visor flickering with static, casting fractured shadows across his weathered face. He scanned the horizon, his brown eyes squinting into the darkness. The stars, once bright and reassuring, were gone, swallowed by a writhing, pulsating mass that churned across the sky, a living nightmare of flesh and shadow. Bioships whispered Private Lyra, her voice trembling as she clutched her lasgun, her young face pale under the grime. Thaddeus said nothing, his hands tightening on his own weapon, the cold metal grounding him against the rising dread. He didn't need to say it. They were all going to die. The Tyranids had come to Agrippa 3 weeks prior, their arrival heralded not by fanfare but by subtle, insidious signs. Spores drifted through the atmosphere, invisible at first, poisoning crops and livestock, turning fields to rot and groks to screaming, blistered husks. Then came the vanguard organisms lictors, silent and deadly, their chameleonic hides blending into the shadows as they picked off sentries and sowed panic among the planetary defense force. By the time the main Hive Fleet arrived, its bio blotting out the sun, the PDF was already fractured. Commanders were dead, killed in their bunkers, or fled in stolen shuttles, leaving the survivors to fend for themselves. Fort Kellis, a concrete bastion surrounded by fields now crawling with Ripper swarms, was one of the last holdouts. Thaddeus had been stationed there for a month. His squadron reduced to 12 men and women, half of them wounded, all of them terrified, their eyes hollow with the knowledge that no help was coming. The narrative unfolds over 5 days, each marked by a new horror, a relentless escalation of despair that stripped away hope and exposed the raw, fragile core of humanity. On the first day, the spores thickened, coating everything in a slick, organic film that clung to skin and armor like a second, suffocating skin. Thaddeus stood watch on the fort's northern wall, his lasgun hot in his hands as he and his squad fought off waves of gaunt small, scuttling creatures with claws like scythes, their eyes gleaming with a cold, alien intelligence. The lasguns burned through power packs, their crimson beams cutting through the mist, felling gaunts by the dozen. But for every one they killed, 10 more emerged, their numbers endless, their chittering a cacophony that drowned out thought. By nightfall, the air was unbreathable without rebreathers, the fort's filters clogged with spores that burned the lungs. The Vox Tower, their last link to the outside world, fell silent, its astropath dead, her body slumped in her chamber, her mind shattered by the psychic pressure of the hive mind. Thaddeus found her, her eyes wide and unseeing, blood trickling from her ears. He closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, though he doubted the Emperor could hear him now. The second day brought a new terror, the first sighting of a hive tyrant, a towering monstrosity that loomed over the burning fields like a god of destruction. Thaddeus saw it from a distance, its silhouette framed against the flames, its massive form bristling with bioweapons claws that could rend plus steel, a whip-like tail that lashed the air, and a presence that seemed to bend reality itself. It didn't attack, not yet. It simply watched, its multifaceted eyes glinting with cold precision, as if studying the defender's every move. The squad huddled in the fort's command bunker, their breath shallow, their hands trembling. Private Lyra, the youngest at 19, broke down, her sobs echoing in the cramped space. She spoke of her family in the southern hives, her mother's bread, her brother's laugh, memories that felt like another lifetime. Thaddeus wanted to comfort her, to tell her they would survive, but the words stuck in his throat. He didn't know how to comfort himself, let alone a girl barely out of childhood. He placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture awkward but sincere, and they sat in silence, the hum of the hive mind pressing against their skulls. On the third day, adapted, their evolution a cruel mockery of life's resilience. The gaunts they had fought before, once vulnerable to lasgun fire, now bore thicker carapaces, their kitten-deflecting shots that would have killed them hours before. The squad's weapons, already low on charge, became all but useless, forcing them to rely on bayonets and desperation. Worse, the spores began to change the survivors. Private Torin, a grizzled veteran with scars from a dozen bar fights, started coughing up black ichor, his skin blistering with unnatural growths that pulsed beneath the surface. Thaddeus found him in the armory, clawing at his face, screaming about voices in his head, whispers that promised release if he surrendered to the hive. Thaddeus hesitated, his lasgun trembling in his hands. But when Torin lunged, his eyes wild and inhuman, Thaddeus fired. The shot echoed in the confined space, and Torin fell, his body twitching as the spores continued their work. The squad's morale crumbled further, their whispers turning to accusations, their fear turning to despair. Thaddeus felt the weight of command, though he was no leader, just the last man standing with a sergeant's stripes. A title that meant nothing in the face of annihilation. By the fourth day, Fort Kellis was surrounded, a lone island in a sea of chitin and claws. Tyranids didn't charge. They didn't need to. They burrowed beneath the earth, their tunnels collapsing the fort's outer defenses, and waited, starving the defenders out. The fort's rations were gone, the water tainted with a sickly sweet sludge that burned the throat. Thaddeus and Lyra ventured outside to scavenge, moving through fields that writhed with ripper swarms, their tiny jaws gnawing at the remains of men and machines. The air was thick with spores, the ground slick with organic refuse, and every step was a gamble. They stumbled across a derelict bunker, its walls etched with desperate prayers to the Emperor, the words smeared with blood and ichor. Inside, they found a data slate, its screen cracked but functional, displaying a final message from the planetary governor: "No help is coming. Fight until the end." Thaddeus tucked the slate into his coat, his hands shaking, the words burning into his mind. Lyra didn't speak. She hadn't since Torin's death, her eyes distant, her face a mask of grief. They returned to the fort empty-handed, the silence between them heavier than the spores in the air. The fifth day was the end. The Hive Tyrant returned, its presence a psychic hammer that shattered what remained of the squad's resolve. It led a tide of bioforms, gaunts, genestealers, and towering carnifexes that overwhelmed the fort's defenses in hours. Thaddeus and Lyra fought from a shattered turret, their lasguns overheating, their screams drowned out by the chittering swarm. The walls fell, the concrete crumbling under the weight of claws and bioacid, and the Tyranids poured in, a living flood that consumed everything in its path. Thaddeus dragged Lyra to the fort's chapel, a last refuge where the survivors had gathered, their faces pale and drawn. The chapel was a ruin, its pews blood-stained, its candles flickering in the stale air. Icons of the Emperor stared down, their eyes cold and unyielding. The survivors, 7 men and women, all that remained of Fort Keller, stood together, their weapons empty, their knives drawn. Thaddeus and Lyra stood at the center, their backs pressed against a cracked altar, their hands gripping each other's. The chittering grew louder, the shadows of the swarm filling the doorway. It wasn't heroic, it was futile. But in that moment, Thaddeus found something resembling defiance, a spark of humanity that refused to be extinguished, even as the jaws closed in. He whispered a prayer, not for salvation, but for forgiveness, for the lives he couldn't save, for the world that was no more. Lyra squeezed his hand, her silence speaking louder than words. And together, they faced the end. Their humanity, the last light in a world gone dark. This narrative arc is not about victory, but about the human cost of facing the Tyranids. It is a story of fear, loss, and the stubborn refusal to surrender, even when all hope is gone. Thaddeus and Lyra, ordinary people in an extraordinary nightmare, embody the fragility and resilience of humanity in the face of cosmic hunger. Their stand in the chapel, surrounded by the ruins of their world, is a testament to the small, defiant moments that define the Tyranid Wars, not the battles won, but the lives lost, and the echoes they leave behind. Thaddeus Varn is the heart of this tale, not because he is extraordinary, but because he is painfully ordinary. A man forged in the unyielding crucible of Agrippa's fields rather than the battlefields of the Imperium. At 32, he stands of average height and build, his frame lean from years of labor, his hands calloused and scarred from wielding plows and scythes, long before he ever touched a lasgun. His brown eyes, once bright with the quiet optimism of a farmer's life, are now tired, shadowed by sleepless nights and the weight of a responsibility he never sought. His face, lined with the creases of sun and toil, bears the marks of a man who has aged beyond his years, each wrinkle a testament to the burdens he carries. Thaddeus is no space marine, no towering hero clad in ceramite, nor an inquisitor wielding the authority of the Emperor's will. He is just a man, a sergeant in the Agrippa IV planetary defense force by circumstance rather than choice, thrust into a nightmare that no training could have prepared him for. His story is not one of grand heroics, but of quiet, stubborn endurance, a refusal to surrender, even when the jaws of annihilation close around him. Born in the southern lowlands of Agrippa IV, Thaddeus grew up in a world of golden fields and clear skies, where the rhythm of life was dictated by the seasons and the Emperor's tithe. His family were Grox farmers, their days spent tending herds and repairing irrigation channels, their nights filled with prayers in the small stone chapel at the edge of their land. Thaddeus was the eldest of 3, his siblings younger by a decade, their laughter a constant in his childhood memories. His father taught him the value of hard work, his mother the importance of faith. And together, they instilled in him a quiet resilience that would define him in the days to come. But those days of simplicity ended when he was drafted into the PDF at 25. Pulled from the fields to serve in a militia that rarely saw action beyond quelling labor disputes or chasing off raiders. Thaddeus was no soldier by nature. He was a caretaker, more comfortable maintaining lasguns than firing them. His hands steady with a wrench, but unsteady with a trigger. Yet, when Hive Fleet Gorgon descended, he found himself in command. Not because of skill or ambition, but because he was the last man standing when his officers fell. Thaddeus's thoughts are haunted by his family. Lost in the southern hives when the Tyranids first struck, he dreams of his mother's face, stern but kind, and his siblings' voices, now silenced by the swarm. The guilt of their loss weighs on him, a constant ache that grows heavier with each soldier he fails to save. He replays the moments before the invasion, wondering if he could have done something, sent them to a shuttle, hidden them in a bunker, anything, to spare them the fate of a grip. This guilt is compounded by his role as a sergeant, a position he feels unqualified for. His stripes a mockery in the face of the hive mind's relentless advance. Yet, Thaddeus persists, driven by a stubborn refusal to give up, a spark of defiance that burns even when hope is gone. It is not courage, not in the way the Imperium's heroes are courageous, but a deeper, more human resolve, a refusal to let the Tyranids erase everything he is without a fight. Lyra, the young private, is Thaddeus's foil, a mirror to his own suppressed despair and a reminder of the life he once knew. At 19, Lyra is green, untested, and terrified, her small frame dwarfed by her ill-fitting flak armor, her hands trembling as she grips her lasgun. Her face, still soft with youth, is streaked with dirt and tears, her green eyes wide with fear that she cannot hide. Lyra is a child of Agrippa's northern plains, her family farmers like Thaddeus, her life shaped by the same fields and prayers. She clings to memories of her mother's cooking, the warm, yeasty smell of bread, fresh from the oven, and her brother's laughter, a sound that once filled their small home with joy. These memories are her anchor, fragile threads that tether her to a world that no longer exists. When the Tyranids came, Lyra was conscripted into the PDF. Her training barely begun before the spores fell and the world began to die. Her fear makes her human, a stark contrast to the cold, unfeeling swarm that surrounds them, and her vulnerability draws Thaddeus to her, not as a soldier, but as a surrogate for the family he lost. Lyra's breakdown on the second day of the siege, as the Hive Tyrant's silhouette loomed over the burning fields, is a pivotal moment in the narrative. Curled in the corner of the command bunker, her sobs echoing in the stale air, she speaks of her family, her voice cracking with grief and terror. Thaddeus, kneeling beside her, feels his own despair rise, a tide he has kept at bay through sheer force of will. He wants to tell her that they will survive, that the Emperor will protect them, but the words feel hollow, a lie he cannot bring himself to speak. Instead, he offers a hand on her shoulder, a gesture that says nothing and everything, a silent acknowledgement of their shared humanity in the face of annihilation. Their bond, fragile and unspoken, becomes the emotional core of the story, a thread of connection that persists even as the world crumbles. Lyra's fate, like Thaddeus's, is a testament to the cost of facing the Tyranids, not just death, but the erosion of everything that makes you human. The stripping away of hope, memory, and identity, until only the raw instinct to survive remains. The Tyranids themselves are a character in their own right, not as individuals, but as a collective force of nature, a living embodiment of cosmic indifference. They are not driven by hate, fear, or ambition. They simply consume, their purpose as immutable as gravity. The hive mind, the gestalt consciousness that binds them, is a presence felt rather than seen, a psychic weight that presses against the minds of the survivors, drowning out thought and prayer. The Hive Tyrant, with its cold, calculating presence, is the hive mind's avatar, a towering monstrosity that coordinates the swarm with a precision that borders on divine. Its multifaceted eyes, gleaming with alien intelligence, seem to see not just the defenders but their fears, their weaknesses, their fleeting moments of defiance. It does not attack recklessly. It watches, it learns, adapting its bioforms to counter every defense, every hope. The Gaunts, with their scythe-like claws and relentless numbers, are the hive mind's foot soldiers, their chittering a constant reminder of the swarm's inevitability. The Rippers, small but insatiable, swarm across the fields, devouring everything in their path. Their jaws a microcosm of the Tyranids' hunger. The spores, drifting through the air, poison the world itself, a silent herald of the apocalypse to come. Each Tyranid bioform is a grotesque masterpiece of evolution, a testament to the hive mind's perverse creativity. The Gaunts evolve mid-battle, their carapaces thickening, their biology shifting to neutralize toxins and deflect less fire. The Lictors, silent and invisible, strike from the shadows, their kills precise and terrifying, sowing panic that weakens the defenders before the main assault. The Rippers, though small, are relentless, their numbers so vast that they transform fields into writhing carpets of death. The Tyranids' indifference is what makes them so terrifying. They do not care for the lives they destroy, the worlds they consume, or the prayers that rise in their wake. They are not enemies in the human sense, but a force beyond comprehension, a hunger that exists only to feed itself. Thaddeus and Lyra's relationship with the Tyranids is one of stark contrast, where the Tyranids are unified, unfeeling, and eternal. Thaddeus and Lyra are fragile, emotional, and painfully mortal. Thaddeus' stubborn defiance, born of guilt and duty, is a human response to an inhuman threat, a refusal to let the hive mind erase him without a fight. Lyra's fear, raw and unfiltered, is a reminder of the humanity the Tyranids seek to consume. Her memories a fragile bulwark against the void. Together, they embody the emotional stakes of the Tyranid Wars, not the grand strategies of generals or the heroics of space marines, but the quiet, desperate struggle of ordinary people to hold on to something, anything, in the face of oblivion. The interplay between Thaddeus, Lyra, and the Tyranids drives the narrative's emotional weight. Thaddeus' guilt and resolve, Lyra's fear and fading hope, and the Tyranids' relentless indifference create a triangle of tension that defines the story. Thaddeus' refusal to surrender, even when he knows it's futile, is a spark of defiance that contrasts with the hive mind's cold efficiency. Lyra's breakdown and silence reflect the toll of the Tyranids' psychic presence, a force that erodes the mind as surely as their claws erode the body. The Tyranids themselves, with their endless adaptability and unyielding hunger, are the ultimate antagonist, a foe that cannot be defeated, only delayed. Their presence looms over every moment, a constant reminder that survival is temporary and extinction is inevitable. In the end, Thaddeus and Lyra's story is not about victory, but about what it means to be human in a universe that does not care. Their bond, fragile and unspoken, is a lifeline in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of the Tyranids, humanity persists not in triumph, but in the small, defiant acts of holding a hand, whispering a prayer, or standing against the swarm. The Tyranids, with their relentless hunger and cold intelligence, are the shadow that defines this light. Their indifference, a canvas against which Thaddeus and Lyra's humanity shines. However, briefly, before the jaws close in, the fall of Fort Killis is not a battle won or lost, it is a cessation, a moment where the struggle ceases, not because of victory or defeat, but because there is simply nothing left to fight for. As the Tyranids breach the chapel, their claws tearing through the ancient stone as if it were paper, Thaddeus Varn and Private Lyra stand back to back at the heart of the shattered sanctuary. Their lasguns, long since depleted, lie discarded at their feet, their power packs spent in a futile effort to stem the tide. In their hands, they clutch knives, simple, steel blades, woefully inadequate against the swarm, but all they have left. The chapel, once a place of solace, is now a tomb, its blood-stained pews littered with the bodies of the fallen, its faded icons of the Emperor staring down with unseeing eyes. The candles, their flames flickering in the stale air, begin to gutter out, casting long shadows that dance with the movement of the encroaching swarm. The chittering grows louder, a relentless cacophony that drowns out thought, hope, and prayer. Thaddeus whispers a prayer to the Emperor, not for salvation is beyond them now, but for forgiveness, for the lives he could not save, for the world he could not protect. Lyra, silent since the horrors of the third day, grips his hand, her fingers trembling but firm, her touch a final anchor in a world unraveling. The swarm surges forward, a living tide of claws and teeth, and the world goes dark, the last light of Agrippa IV snuffed out in an instant. Agrippa IV is no more. The Tyranids, driven by the relentless hunger of Hive Fleet Gorgon, strip it bare, their Ripper swarms devouring every trace of life plants, animals, water, even the air itself until nothing remains but barren rock and ash. The fields that once fed billions across the Ultima Segmentum are gone, replaced by a desolate wasteland where no seed will ever take root again. The cities, with their modest spires and stone temples, are reduced to rubble, their inhabitants consumed or scattered, their prayers silenced by the hive mind's psychic weight. The Imperium's records, meticulous but cold, mark Agrippa IV as another casualty of Gorgon, a footnote in a galaxy-spanning war that claims worlds as easily as it claims lives. The Vox logs, fragmented and garbled, speak of spores and shadows. The survivor accounts, carried by the few who escaped on failing shuttles, are dismissed as the ravings of broken minds. The astropathic transmissions, sent in the final hours, are lost in the warp, drowned by the hive mind's scream. For the Imperium, Agrippa IV is a statistic, a minor loss in a conflict too vast to comprehend. But for Thaddeus, Lyra, and the millions who died, it was everything: their homes, their families, their lives erased as if they had never been. The impact of this tale lies in its intimacy, in the small human moments that define the Tyranid Wars, far more than the grand strategies of generals or the heroics of the Adeptus Astartes. It is not a story of space marines clad in wielding bolters to turn the tide, nor of inquisitors unraveling the secrets of the hive mind. It is a story of ordinary people, farmers, laborers, youths caught in a nightmare they cannot escape, their lives defined by fear, loss, and the fleeting defiance that burns even in the face of annihilation. Thaddeus Vaughn, with his calloused hands and tired eyes, is no hero in the Imperium's mold. He is a man, flawed and afraid, driven not by glory but by a stubborn refusal to let the Tyranids take everything without a fight. His whispered prayer, in the chapel, his hand clutching Lyra's, his final stand amidst the flickering candles, these are not the actions of a legend, but of a human being clinging to the last fragments of his soul. Lyra, too, embodies this intimacy. Her fear and silence a mirror to the despair that consumes Agrippa. At 19, she is a child in a war that spares no one. Her memories of her mother's bread and her brother's laughter, a fragile shield against the horror of the swarm. Her breakdown on the second day, her sobs echoing in the command bunker, is not a sign of weakness but of humanity, a reminder that the Tyranids do not just destroy bodies, they erode the spirit, stripping away hope and memory until only fear remains. Her silence in the final days, her refusal to speak after witnessing Private Tauren's horrific transformation, is a testament to the toll of the Tyranids' presence, a psychic and biological assault that leaves no one untouched. Yet, in her final moment, gripping Thaddeus's hand, she finds a quiet strength, a connection that defies the hive mind's indifference. Their bond, fragile and unspoken, is the heart of the story, a thread of humanity that persists even as the world ends. The Tyranids themselves, though not human, amplify the intimacy of this tale through their sheer otherness. They are not enemies in the traditional sense, driven by motives that can be understood or countered. They are a force of nature, their hunger as inevitable as the star's light. The hive tyrant, with its cold, calculating presence, watches the defenders with eyes that see not just their actions but their fears, its intelligence a mockery of human will. The gaunts, rippers, and spores, each a grotesque masterpiece of evolution, move with a unity that contrasts starkly with the fractured, desperate survivors of Fort Kellis. The Tyranids' indifference is what makes them so terrifying. They do not hate, they do not fear, they simply consume, and in doing so, they erase not just lives but the very memory of them. Against this backdrop, Thaddeus and Lyra's small acts of defiance of prayer, a hand held, a knife drawn are magnified. Their humanity, a fleeting light in the darkness of the hive mind's shadow. This tale is a meditation on mortality, a reminder of the fragility of existence in a universe that does not care. The Tyranid Wars are not just a conflict of flesh and steel, but a confrontation with the void itself, a force that strips away everything that makes life meaningful. For Thaddeus, the loss of his family, his squad, and his world is a personal apocalypse, each death a wound that deepens his guilt. For Lyra, the erosion of her memories, her hope, and her voice is a slow death, her silence a scream that no one hears. Yet, in their final moments, they find something to hold on to: not victory, not salvation, but each other, a connection that defies the Tyranids' erasure. This is the impact of their story, not the scale of the war, but the scale of the human heart, the small, stubborn moments that persist even when all is lost. For those who listen, this tale is a journey into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. A world where hope is a luxury and survival a fleeting dream. It is a story that lingers, not in the triumph of battle, but in the quiet, haunting moments of loss and defiance. The fall of Agrippa IV is a microcosm of the Tyranid threat, a reminder that the great devourer does not just destroy worlds, it erases them, leaving no trace of the lives that once flourished. The Imperium may record Agrippa IV's loss as a footnote, but for Thaddeus, Lyra, and the millions who died, it was a universe unto itself, a world of fields and prayers, of families and dreams, all consumed by the relentless hunger of the Hive. This intimacy, this focus on the human cost, is what makes their story resonate. A whisper in the void that speaks to the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. The Tyranids' victory is absolute, but it is not the end of the story. In the silence that follows, in the barren rock and ash of Agrippa IV, there is a lingering echo, the memory of Thaddeus's prayer, of Lyra's hand in his, of the defiance that burned in the chapel's dying light. These moments, small and fleeting, are the true impact of the tale, a reminder that even in the face of cosmic indifference, humanity persists, if only for a moment. For those who hear this story, it is a call to reflect on their own mortality, to consider what they would hold on to when the swarm comes, what they would fight for when all hope is gone. It is a meditation on the cost of existence, on the beauty and tragedy of being human in a universe that offers no mercy, only the endless hunger of the void. As the silence settles over Agrippa IV, a heavy, suffocating stillness that smothers the last echoes of life, we leave Thaddeus Varn and Private Lyra to their fate, their voices fading into the cosmic night, like whispers, lost in the void. The chapel of Fort Kellis, once a sanctuary of flickering candles and fervent prayers, is now a tomb, its walls breached, its icons shattered, its air thick with the stench of death and decay. Thaddeus's final prayer to the Emperor, a plea, not for salvation, but for forgiveness, lingers in the darkness, a fleeting spark of humanity extinguished by the relentless tide of the Hive. Lyra's hand, clasped in his, is a silent testament to their bond, a fragile connection that held fast, even as the swarm surged forward. Their story ends, not in triumph or redemption, but in the quiet, inevitable cessation that defines the Tyranid Wars. The Tyranids move on, their hunger unquenched, their bioships drifting through the void in search of the next world to devour. Leaving Agrippa IV as nothing more than a barren husk, a scar on the galaxy's edge where life once flourished. This has been Tales of the Tyranid Wars, a glimpse into the horror and futility of facing the Hive Fleets, a narrative woven from the threads of despair, defiance, and the haunting beauty of humanity's final moments. The story of Thaddeus and Lyra is not one of grand heroics or galaxy-shaking battles, but of the small, intimate struggles that define the Warhammer 40,000 universe in its darkest corners. It is a tale designed to stir the soul, to linger in the mind like the afterimage of a nightmare, its weight felt in the quiet moments before sleep. If this story has haunted your dreams, if the chittering of the swarm or the flicker of Thaddeus's candles has left an imprint on your heart, then share it with others who walk the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Let their tale ripple outward, a whisper in the void that carries the weight of a world's end. Subscribe for more tales to sleep to, where the shadows of the Warhammer universe come to life. Each story a meditative descent into the abyss, a somber lullaby for a galaxy at war. And as you drift off, ask yourself, when the Tyranids come for your world, what will you fight for? Good night, and may the Emperor protect your dreams. The Warhammer 40,000 universe is a tapestry of endless conflict, where every world, every life, is a fragile thread in a vast, unyielding weave. The Tyranids, with their insatiable hunger and relentless adaptability, are perhaps the most terrifying of its threats, not because they seek dominion or glory, but because they seek nothing at all, only consumption, only erasure. Fall as a microcosm of this threat, a single note in the dirge of a galaxy under siege. Thaddeus and Lyra's story, though small in the grand scope of the Imperium's wars, is a powerful reminder of the human cost of such conflicts. Their defiance in the face of annihilation, their refusal to surrender even when hope was gone, speaks to the core of what it means to be human in a universe that offers no mercy. This tale is not just a story, it is a reflection, a mirror held up to our own fears and resilience, a question posed in the silence of the night. What would you do when the end comes? Sharing this story is more than passing along a tale of fiction. It is an invitation to others to step into the grim darkness, to feel the weight of the Tyranid shadow, to stand beside Thaddeus and Lyra in their final moments. The Warhammer 40,000 community thrives on these shared experiences, on the stories that bind us to the universe we love. Whether through the clash of armies on the tabletop, or the quiet contemplation of lore in the stillness of the night, by sharing tales of the Tyranid Wars, you invite others to join you in this journey, to explore the themes of loss, defiance, and humanity that define this narrative. Post it on forums, share it with friends, discuss it in the comments of your favorite Warhammer channels. Let the story of Agrippa IV become a beacon for those who seek the somber beauty of the 41st millennium. Encourage them to reflect on the questions it raises. What is worth fighting for when all is lost? What does it mean to be human in the face of the void? Subscribing to more tales like this one ensures that the shadows of the Warhammer universe continue to unfold, each story a new window into its grim darkness. These tales are crafted to be more than entertainment. They are experiences, designed to lull you into a meditative state, where the horrors and hopes of the 41st millennium can take root. Each episode of Tales to Sleep 2 is a journey, a chance to walk the shattered streets of worlds, like Agrippa IV, to stand in the shoes of those who face the unimaginable. By subscribing, you join a community of listeners who find solace in the darkness, who seek out the stories that haunt as much as they captivate. Whether you listen as you drift off to sleep, letting the words weave into your dreams, or sit wide awake, immersed in the atmosphere of dread, these tales are a gift to those who cherish the lore of Warhammer 40,000. Visit the channel, hit the subscribe button, and ensure that you never miss a story. Each one a new thread in the tapestry of the galaxy's endless war. The call to action extends beyond sharing, and subscribing it is a call to reflect, to engage with the deeper themes of this tale. The Tyranids represent more than a physical threat. They are a metaphor for the inexorable forces that threaten to erase us, whether they be time, loss, or the indifference of the universe. Thaddeus and Lyra's story asks you to consider what you would hold on to when faced with such a force. Would it be faith, like Thaddeus's whispered prayer to the Emperor? Would it be connection, like Lyra's silent grip on his hand? Would it be defiance, the refusal to go quietly into the night? These questions are not just for the characters of Agrippa IV, but for all of us, living in a world where our own battles, however small, mirror their struggle. As you listen, let these questions linger, let them settle into your thoughts, and let them guide you as you navigate your own darkness. The atmosphere of this tale is designed to be immersive, a slow descent into the dread and despair of the Tyranid Wars, the chittering of the swarm, the flicker of dying candles, the weight of the hive mind's presence. These are not just details, but sensations, crafted to pull you into the world of Fort Kellis. As you drift off, let these sensations carry you. Let the echoes of Agrippa IV become a part of your dreams. The Warhammer 40,000 universe is vast, its stories as varied as the stars, but it is, in tales like this one, that we find its heart, not in the glory of victory, but in the quiet human moments that persist against all odds. Let the story of Thaddeus and Lyra be a reminder that even in the grim darkness, there is beauty in the struggle, in the refusal to be erased. For those who find solace in the Warhammer universe, this tale is an invitation to explore its depths. Further, dive into the lore of the Tyranids, read the accounts of Hive Fleets, Behemoth, Kraken, and Leviathan, and discover the worlds they have consumed. Paint your models, build your armies, and bring the stories of the 41st millennium to life. On the tabletop, share your own tales, whether they be of battles fought or characters imagined, and let the community grow stronger through your contributions. The Warhammer 40,000 universe is a shared space, a place where we come together to face the darkness, to find meaning in the struggle, and to celebrate the stories that define us. By engaging with this tale, you become a part of that legacy, a keeper of the flame in a galaxy where the light is ever fading. As you prepare to sleep, let the silence of Agrippa IV envelop you. Let the weight of Thaddeus and Lyra's fate settle into your bones. The Tyranids will come again, their hunger eternal, their claws ever near. But in this moment, as you close your eyes, you carry their story with you, a whisper in the void that refuses to be silenced. Ask yourself, as the darkness closes in, what you would fight for, what you would hold on to when the end comes. The answer may surprise you, may haunt you, may give you strength. Good night, listeners, and may the Emperor protect your dreams, shielding you from the shadows that lurk beyond the stars. Until the next tale, keep the faith, share the story, and let the grim darkness of the 41st millennium live on in your heart.